When I was in my early 20s, my date and I decided to go to the Sal Inn in West Sacramento to play pool. We'd been there before and enjoyed speaking with the bartender. I can't recall her name, but she was a beautiful, engaging woman. This particular night, we walked in and noticed the pool table was occupied. There was a man and woman shooting a game, so my date bought us some drinks while I watched. After a few minutes, the man noticed me and struck up a conversation with me. When my date came over with our drinks, the man asked us if we wanted to shoot a game with them. It didn't occur to me at the time that his female companion hadn't yet said anything. We said yes, so he racked up the balls and we played against them. During the game, we introduced ourselves, and right after the man began asking me some personal questions that started to bother me. Like, where did I live? Had my date? And I had been dating for long. Did we live together? Etc. I noticed the man and his friend kept looking at each other. I became increasingly uncomfortable, even though the rest of the conversation was benign and pleasant in nature. Weirdly, the woman still hadn't said anything. When the game was over, the man asked us if we wanted to leave with them to go to another bar down the street. At first, I didn't say anything. The guy asked us again, saying they discovered a cool bar not too far from where we were. My date and I looked at each other, and before he could say anything, I blurted out, no thanks, we have dinner plans. We in fact did not have dinner plans, but my date didn't argue with me. I think he saw the look of panic on my face. We both grabbed our jackets and got the hell out of there. By the time we walked out the door, the hair was literally standing up on the back of my neck. When we got back to my truck, my date asked me what was wrong. I told him I got a horrible feeling from those people and just knew we had to get away from them. I told him it was weird that he asked us to leave with them and he didn't check with his date first. He shrugged and said okay. I think he thought I was crazy. A few days later, I opened up the afternoon paper. There was an article in there about a woman from West Sacramento who had been found murdered. I didn't think of anything until I got to the page where the article was continued, and the picture of the woman practically leapt off the page at me. It was the beautiful bartender from the Sal Inn. Apparently she'd been kidnapped, raped, and killed that very night I was there with that date. I was totally creeped out and thought what a crazy coincidence that was, and how sad she had died so horribly. It wasn't until a month or so later that I realized why I had gotten so upset that night. A man and woman had just been arrested for the bartender's murder, along with the murders of several other people, 4 of whom were couples. There, on the front page of the Sacramento Bee, were pictures of the killers, Gerald and Charlene Galgeo, the very couple who invited my date and I to go with them to another bar, and apparently this is one of the russes they used to get their victims into their van. My heart did flip-flops in my chest as I read the article. Not only had we been targeted as their next serial killer victims when we turned them down, they selected another target because of me. I had lived with both relief and guilt all of my life because of this. Intellectually, I know it's not my fault the bartender died, but I've always wondered how different the world would have been if she had been able to live out her life, even though I would have been gone myself. Needless to say, that was the end of my bar date experiences for a long, long time. Early in our marriage, long before we had any children, my husband and I would go camping during our vacations. We loved the outdoors. On this occasion, we set up our tent next to a trout stream where he fished every spring. On the edge of the state forest, it was a beautiful and remote. Very few people camped there because it was primitive, having no amenities, saving a dirt road and some fire rings. Only fly fishermen liked the spot. It was in the middle of the week and no one else was there. I would hike and he would tie flies during daylight, but at night he would fish. The trout rose to feed late at night. So my husband usually went out at about 10 to 11 p.m. and returned about 2 a.m. I would stay at the campsite, tend the fire, turn up the lantern, and read. This is what I was doing when a young man walked into the light at our camp. He looked to be in his late 20s, with a scruffy beard and wearing a baseball cap, t-shirt, shorts, and trainers. He was not dressed for camping. No hiking boots, backpack, water jug, etc. No flashlight. He just looked out of place. He startled me, as I had not heard a vehicle or any other noise approaching. He said hello, looked around, and I offered him a camp chair to sit by the fire. I asked if he was a fisherman, but he said no. He had been visiting friends nearby. Strangely, he did not sit down, but started wandering around our campsite, looking at the car, the folding table set up with our various equipment, and even into our tent. He was talking about nonstop all the while, about what a nice night it was, asking me all sorts of questions about why I was there and who I was with, etc. I became increasingly alarmed because he had been angling behind me. I got up from my chair and also started moving, not letting him get behind me, carrying on the strange conversation, all while telling him that my husband would return any moment. This is not true. He wasn't expected to be back for at least a couple more hours. Meanwhile, I started planning to defend myself, looking for a piece of wood to use as a club, wondering how far my husband was and if anyone would hear me if I screamed. I knew the river well, where it drops, shallow parts, clay ledges were, so I thought I maybe should jump in there, or possibly run down the hiking trail and disappear into the woods. I tried to keep a good distance between us, but if I moved, he moved. I mentally prepared to fight with tooth and nail. Meanwhile, I was screaming inside my head at my husband, "Where are you? Come back. I'm in danger. Come back now." This weird cat and mouse game probably went on for only a little while, but it seemed forever. The fellow started talking about being in the military and serving in Southeast Asia. The rushing water, all the crickets, peepers, and other night noises were causing him to flashback. Teetering on the edge of panic, I heard that whoosh whoosh noise of my husband's waters as he walked up the trail, approaching our campsite. Thank God! Almost hysterically grateful and relieved, I ran toward him, saying loudly, "Look, honey, we have unexpected company." He appeared confused, and when I turned to gesture at the stranger, he was completely disappeared. As my husband removed his waters and vest and unloaded his fishing gear, I described my strange encounter. We immediately scouted the area but found no trace of the young man. We walked up some distance up the road but saw no lights or any sign of a car. We returned uneasily at our campsite. My husband explained why he had to cut his fishing short. He had a really scary experience while casting in the stream. Here, he was engaging in his favorite sport in his favorite spot, and for the first time he was actually frightened. Then a beaver suddenly jumped off the bank into the water right next to him with a big splash, scaring the hell out of him and practically making him fall over. I don't know why, but he felt like he had to get the hell out of there right away, and so he did. Some might say that nothing happened and that it was all in my imagination, but why did that guy take off the minute my husband approached? No, we believed he had bad intentions. After that, I would never be alone at a campsite or in the woods again. I accompanied my husband while he fished, sitting on the bank, slapping at the mosquitoes, or else we would bring a friend or two along so I would have company by the fire. But camping was never the same idyllic experience. Many years ago, in Bridgeton, Missouri, at the corner of Natural Bridge Road and St. Charles Rock Road, there is a restaurant of the Gold Round chain. The building it was in was old. Parts of it were turn of the previous century, primarily the dirt floor sub-basement used for storing surplus items from all stores in the region. You got the sub-basement by crossing the concrete basement that was added in the 40s or 50s. There was a second story added the time the building had been converted to a restaurant, likely 20 years before I worked there. From the time I started working there, the other employees told me about weird things, lights going off, doors to walk-ins closing on you when you propped them open. The second story was the regional office, and the cleric staff had weird things happen as well. I never witnessed as much until I was tasking with going downstairs into the sub-basement to search for and retrieve some bar equipment. I'd been in the front of the basement hundreds of times, changing into my work uniform. The locker room was there, and changing out kegs, so that wasn't too bad. I made my way to the door to the dirt-floored basement, keyed open the padlock, and opened the door. As I opened the door, I heard something crazy, like something heavy moving slightly, but I wore it off to all the crazy stuff I've heard. At this point, I had experienced none of it. I pulled open the door, and I swear to God, it was like a dungeon door opening, and the earthy smell of the basement hit me. Not exactly unpleasant, but certainly heavy. I flipped the switch for overheads, of which there were 30-watt bulbs in a 60 by 440 room, which helped a little, but not as much. As I stepped into the room and thumbed on my flashlight, I felt something strange. Not frightened exactly, but expected of something bad. That's the best I can explain it. Splashed the heavy light around, looking for the equipment. I don't even remember what it was. I never retrieved it. I've been told it was very near the door in plain sight. I moved further into the room, looking around, and feeling got more pronounced, starting to raise the hair on the back of my neck. Halfway across the room, no sight of what I'm looking for, and suddenly I'm feeling very cold, and the odd feeling escalated into outright fear. I came up on the balls of my feet, moving the flashlight around slowly. Suddenly, I was certain I was not alone in this old dank room full of broken chairs, stacked crumpled boxes, moldy table linen, etc. A full circuit, and I saw nothing that was out of place, but the light was playing oddly. The stored items in the room cast the unsettling shadows. As I was about to move into the room, I was determined to find what I was looking for, as I knew I'd catch hell if it was there, and I didn't get because I got spooked. I sincerely felt a colder draft in the already cold room. I swear something brushed past me, moving towards the door, and then I saw box 10 behind me moving slightly, like someone brushed past it. At this point, my limbic system took over for me, and I was moving towards the door at a pretty good sprint. I had to get out of that door, close it, lock it, and I knew it had to be now. As I reached the door, it actually seemed to close slowly. I dropped a shoulder and a full tilt, slamming it back against the wall. I slid to stop and jumped at the door, slammed it and locked it. In my mind's eye, I imagined it was one fluid motion, but in retrospect, I fumbled a lot, but I got it shut and locked. As I was moving very quickly towards the stairs, something thumped the other side of the door. All the rest and weird feeling in the room could have imagined it all. But I know I heard something bang on that door. I'll tell you today, 40 years later, that I do not want to know what it was. Believe me, it don't believe it's on you. I'm a practical man that needs logic and proof. But something happened in that storage area that I'd rather really not deal with ever again.